Hey Jordan, can you increase your metabolism?
It's a great question, Mitch. That's what we're going to talk about today. Can you increase your metabolism? The short answer is yes. The longer answer is we're going to talk about it after jiu-jitsu. All right, so we just wrapped up with training, but we're not done here yet. We got Coco, Alex and Lacey's dog, so they're actually out of town, so I'm gonna go take Coco outside, a little pee and pooper, and then we'll head back. All right, back in the office, we are ready to talk about metabolism, but first, got to clean off the whiteboard from the video we did last week and just get this office ready. So I think Mitch is gonna put a little time lapse in. Let's get ready. Okay, we're set up. We're talking about metabolism. Number one, can you actually increase your metabolism? The short answer to that is yes. The longer answer to that is we're gonna discuss it in this video. So watch the whole thing, do not skip around, okay? Now, before we talk about how you can increase your metabolism, the next question is, what the fuck is your metabolism? This is one of the most important questions to answer because so many people tell me, just randomly, they'll DM me, they'll just be like, I've got a slow metabolism. I've got a slow metabolism. People tell me this all the time, yeah, but I've got a slow metabolism. And I always ask, what is your metabolism? And they have no clue what the fuck it is, which I've always found very interesting for people to be so confident in saying they have a slow metabolism, or people will be like, I've got such a fast metabolism. It's like, they don't even know what they're talking about. So let's define metabolism, all right? Now we have this image here. This image here that you're gonna see on your screen, Mitch is gonna put up a picture as well. I crudely drew my own. It is not metabolism, but it does give you a really good understanding of how energy in your body is used, okay? So metabolism, very simply, is essentially the sum of all the chemical processes going on in your body at any one time. But I'm gonna make that a little bit easier to understand. So when we're looking at all of the chemical processes going on in your body, like everything happening, in order for your body to do things like blink, like talk, like breathe, like think, to literally do, just to literally keep your body alive, to keep your heart pumping blood throughout your body, for all of these things to happen, for you to be watching me right now, to have your eyes focused, to be processing what I'm saying, these are all processes going on in your body in order to keep you alive and to keep you aware of what's going on. This all requires energy. And another word for energy is calories, right? So it requires energy from your body in order to keep you alive. Now, different processes require different amounts of energy, okay? So, for example, just sitting there watching me doesn't require much energy from you. But if you were to stand up right now and start walking around the room while you're watching me, well, now this is requiring much more energy, much more calories from your body in order to actually to continue that activity, okay? So while metabolism is the sum of all the chemical processes in your body, what we really want to focus on is how much energy your body is using in order to maintain that activity, in order to maintain those processes. So with that in mind, what this image is showing you here, it's essentially showing you how much energy your body is using for different things that you're doing throughout the day, okay? So this big box right here that takes up about like 70% of the total calories you burn every day, it's called your basal metabolic rate, okay? Now, people talk about basal metabolic rate and resting metabolic rate pretty interchangeably. I'm not gonna get into the nuance here. For the sake of this video, they're essentially the same thing. There are some differences, but we're just gonna basically say BMR and RMR are essentially the same thing, even though they're not technically the same thing, all right? For all the science nerds coming at me. What makes up about 70% of your daily calorie burn is literally just how much your body needs, how much energy your body needs in order to survive. That's it. Like, for example, when you're sleeping, you're burning calories just to keep you alive. It's the least amount of calories you're gonna burn. Obviously, you'll burn way more calories when you're walking around or running or doing errands or whatever it is. Like, you burn more calories from doing that, but in order to survive, your body has to use energy, right? So even just sleeping, you're burning calories. So your BMR is just what your body burns in order to survive and stay where it is right now, okay? Now, from there, we go up to the next biggest percentage in terms of how many calories you're burning. This is NEAT, okay? And the fancy term for this is non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which I'm sure many of you have heard of already. If you haven't, no worries, I'm gonna explain it. Non-exercise activity thermogenesis is a very fancy way of saying how many calories your body is burning doing things that are not planned exercise, okay? And the planned is, unfortunately, like that's the really important word here, right? And a lot of people get super convoluted with this and like, okay, well, so if I plan to go on a walk, does that count as NEAT, or is that like it's getting into the weeds, and I'll talk about that in a second. But basically, going to run errands, right? That's non-exercise activity thermogenesis. If you're doing the dishes, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. If you park your car further away in a parking lot and you have to walk in longer to the grocery store or the movie theater, wherever it is you're going, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. When Mitch and I were getting this room set up, as you saw in the time lapse, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, okay? All the things you do throughout the day, all of the movement adds up over time. And this takes up a pretty big percentage of your total daily calorie burn. Obviously, the vast majority of it is your BMR, RMR, right? But the next biggest chunk is your NEAT, which is very important, and I want you to remember that because it's gonna come back into play as we get further into this video. Above that, we have something called your TEF, your thermic effect of food, okay? Now, in order for you to digest food, your body, it requires energy of your body, not to, to chew the food, to digest the food, to absorb it, to bring it down into your body, to be able to use that food for nutrients, to send it all throughout your body, to muscles, to your liver, everywhere, right? In order to digest and properly utilize that food, it requires energy. Now, different macronutrients have different amounts of energy required in order to break it down, right? So fat has a much lower thermic effect. It requires much less energy to break fat down than it would to, say, break protein or carbohydrates down, or even alcohol, right? So if we're looking at the foods that you're eating, you can actually manipulate how much energy your body will burn based on prioritizing certain macronutrients. Protein, this is why it's so important, we'll talk about that later. But so you have your BMR, your NEAT, the TEF, how many calories you're burning just from literally eating food, and then we have EAT at the top, which stands for exercise activity thermogenesis. So it's not NEAT, it's EAT, and that is, during your workout. That is like literally your planned exercise activity. When you go to the gym, when you lift weights, when you decide to go on a run, anything planned exercise activity goes into EAT. And as you can see from this graph, that's the smallest amount. That is the smallest amount of calorie burn you have on a daily basis. That's assuming you're exercising every day, which you don't need to exercise every day. You don't have to have planned exercise every day. But for I want you to really keep in mind here is most people, when they think about increasing their metabolism, they start thinking about what workouts they're gonna do. Well, what workouts can I do to boost my metabolism? Maybe I should do HIIT. Maybe I should do whatever. I'm not saying it's not important, but look at the percentage of that this makes up of your total calorie burn. Even if you're doing the most intense, high intensity interval training workout, it's a fucking minuscule percentage relative to your TEF and especially to your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, okay? Now, one more thing I want to cover. I probably should have covered this in the BMR, RMR category earlier, but arguably the biggest aspect of your total BMR, of like what you're burning every day, is your current size, right? So how big you are is the biggest influence on how many calories you're burning, right? So I'm 5'4", about 150 pounds or so. Someone who is 5'10" and 200 pounds will by definition have a faster metabolism than me, because they will burn more calories just in order to survive. In order to be able to support a 5'10", 200 pound individual, it requires more energy. Now, this is often why people will say, well, men can eat more than women without gaining weight. Well, that's mainly because, in speaking of general terms, men tend to be bigger than women. They have often more muscle mass, which we'll talk about, but they're just bigger. They have more mass. So ironically, if you really want to speed up your metabolism, which I think is the wrong thing to go for, if you want to speed up your metabolism, you could just gain weight. And gaining weight is going to increase your metabolism, but most people, when they say they want to increase their metabolism, what they're actually saying is they want to lose fat. So gaining weight for the sake of gaining weight is not a good idea, even though you will speed up your metabolism. Your real goal is you want to lose fat. How can we adjust your daily lifestyle in order to increase your metabolism that will also help you lose fat without necessarily, needing to put on more weight just for the sake of putting on more weight so you can have a faster metabolism, okay? So keep in mind, the biggest aspect of your actual BMR is how big you currently are. And again, like I'm 5'4", 150 pounds. Like there are many women who can eat significantly more than I can just because they're bigger than me. It has relatively little to do with whether you are a man or a woman, and far more to do with how big you actually are, or how much mass you have, okay? So with that in mind, the next question that people ask is, do some people have a naturally faster or slower metabolism than others? Now, a lot of people will ask this from the perspective, and this is more of like a psychology or maybe even philosophy discussion as opposed to, short answer is yes, they do. Yes, some people do have a naturally or slower, faster metabolism, okay? But when I'm thinking about why people ask this question, a lot of people want to be justified in why something might be harder for them. Well, I just want to know, like, do I have a slower metabolism because I want to feel justified in why this is so difficult? The reality is this: weight loss, and specifically fat loss, is always fucking hard. It's difficult. It is very fucking difficult, period, end of story. Just like everything in life, some things are easier or harder depending on the person. For me, math is really difficult for me. School, actually, never mind just math, but school in general, sitting down, paying attention, being in school was unbelievably difficult for me. If I had to do that forever, like I would fail. Like I'm not good in that situation. Some people are naturally better at hand-eye coordination. For other people, hand-eye coordination is really difficult. Some people are just naturally gifted singers. They can sing beautifully. You don't want to hear me sing. I suck at singing, right? So no matter what we do in life, some people will have it a little bit easier and other people will have it a little bit harder. So I don't want you to use this as a justification not to try at all. Even if you do have a naturally slower metabolism, it doesn't mean that you can't succeed. It just means it's going to be a little bit more difficult for you. And cool, noted, keep fucking going, right? So in terms of, do some people have a faster or slower metabolism? Yes, some people do. There are some conditions that could affect your metabolic rate. Could be, hypothyroid. Having a hypothyroid could reduce your metabolism. Having a hyperthyroid could increase your metabolism. And I know a lot of people here like, oh, well, I would love to have a hyperthyroid. No, you wouldn't. Like, you want a healthy thyroid is what you want, which fortunately, thank God, we have medication now that can help bring your thyroid back to a healthy level. Now, if you do have a thyroid issue or any other issue that we have medication for, once you're on medication for it and your thyroid levels are back to normal, like it's evened the playing field, it's leveled it off. So a lot of people, maybe they have hypothyroid, but then they get on medication and then their thyroid levels are back to normal. They're being monitored by a doctor and like, cool, they're in a healthy range. So it's not an issue anymore. It's not any more difficult than it would, it's now easier than it would have been because your thyroid levels are back to normal. But if you're on medication and your thyroid levels are back to normal, it's not like you're not at a disadvantage anymore. It's just equally as difficult for you as other people, right? So if you're not on medication, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I know a lot of people are resistant to certain medications for any number of reasons. If you legitimately have been diagnosed with a hypothyroid, for example, or PCOS, or you have something that is really, really wrong, and your doctor's recommending a medication, I would strongly encourage you to consider it, because if you don't, it's going to make it infinitely more difficult if your thyroid levels are not brought back up to a normal range, okay? So, yes, some people do have a faster metabolism based on that, or a slower metabolism based on that, but from a more unique standpoint that I want to discuss this in relation to is we can look at NEAT, okay, people's non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And this one really hits home with a lot of people. So I guarantee you can think back to your middle school, high school days, and you could think about one kid in the class who was just like super fidgety. Maybe they were like always like tapping their leg, or they were always looking around, or every time they ran into the classroom, they would jump up and touch the ceiling, whatever it was, they were just always fucking moving. And that person was also probably like relatively skinny, right? They were probably relatively skinny. They might've been eating a lot. Often, like I have this one kid in my mind that I went to high school with, I'm not gonna say his name, but like super annoying, always fidgety, always drinking regular sodas, like not diet, regular sodas and candy. I remember he would always have Skittles as well, but he was always going, just fucking nonstop. That requires an unbelievable amount of extra energy, extra calories burned versus someone like me who's just sitting there like this, right? Like I was sitting there like this, or I was falling asleep in the back of class. The kid who's going like this crazy the whole time is burning literally sometimes over 1,000 extra calories per day just from all the movement compared to me who's just like, you know, whatever. And that actually is largely genetic, which is very, very interesting. If we look at research, we've found that some people, like on the low end, could burn between an extra 200 to 900 calories. And that's, I think, undershooting it. I think some people could burn well over 1,000 extra calories a day just from their non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is why we're gonna get more into it, like the top 3 things you can do to increase your metabolism. But one of the major things is just moving more. Just move. This is why one of the reasons why walking is so beneficial, just getting up, walking. It's why the cliche idea of parking further away in the parking lot, it doesn't seem like much, but it actually adds up, not in that one single action, but when that one single action is multiplied throughout the day into many, many, many actions in which you deliberately take more steps, you deliberately move more, it adds up to a tremendous amount, which is why, you know, NEAT is the second biggest box in this total scenario, the biggest in terms of the ones that you actually have control over. It's like, move more. It's gonna have the biggest impact on your metabolism. So yes, some people do have a faster or slower, and there's not much you can do to change it, especially from the genetic perspective, but from an actual, you going out of your way to take control of it, whether it's taking medication or moving more, there's actually a lot that you can do. Now, the next thing I want to talk about before we get into the top 3 things you can do to increase your metabolism, does metabolism decrease with age? This is super, super, super important to discuss. It's a very common question, and I'm going to do my absolute best to stay away from absolutes. So until very recently, it was widely believed that metabolism, without question, decreases as you get older, basically every year, right? So, I mean, the majority of my clients, about 70 to 75% of my clients are women, usually between like 25 to 75, right? I do have a good chunk of men as well, but the majority are women between 25 to 75. And you know, every 5 years, like 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, oh, metabolism is just so slow. It's so much slower now just because I'm getting older. Well, very recent and well-performed research has actually found that between ages of 20 and 60, metabolism does not drop. Now, I'm hesitant to say this as an absolute because there could be more research that comes out that says, oh, you know what, maybe that research was incorrect or there's more nuance to it, and I'm sure there is. But very, very, very well-performed research came out showing that between 20 to 60, we don't see a significant drop in metabolism at all. After 60, we do start to see a pretty notable drop in metabolism, but I think there are many things you can do to prevent that drop or to mitigate it at best, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But between 20 to 60, your metabolism, as of now, as of the recording of this video on December 23rd, 2022, the most up-to-date current research shows that your metabolism isn't dropping that much as you get older. Now, after 60, there are things you can do to help mitigate that drop, but the reason I bring this up is because I don't want you to use age as an excuse to not try. And a lot of people, they get to 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, and they just give up. They're like, well, I'm just too old now. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, ideally, you're gonna be able to live for another 40, 50, 60 years, right? Like there's so much more time. If you decide you want to lose weight, like you absolutely can do it. Interestingly, the effects on metabolism have far less to do with your actual physical age and far more to do with your lifestyle habits as a result of your age, right? So it has far less to do with, oh, well, I'm 45, so my metabolism has dropped. It's like, no, well, you're 45, you have 3 kids, you're staying at home, you're not going out as much, like COVID happened, so instead of having to go to the grocery store, you can just order it on your phone and have it delivered to you. You could order out from restaurants, have them bring it to you. There's so many things that happen as you get older. When you were a kid, like I think about being on a college campus. When I was on a college campus, I was easily getting 20 to 30,000 steps a day. When I was living in New York City, I was easily getting 20,000 steps a day without trying. Now, not living in New York City and not being a college kid anymore, I'm driving, I'm not walking everywhere. Like it's so much easier to move less. So it has far less to do with the number attached to when you were born and far more to do with, oh, well, as I'm getting older, maybe instead of going out on the town and like going out and bar hopping, which by the way, even though you're drinking a lot, you're still moving, you're bar hopping, you're out, you're hanging out, whatever, all this stuff. Now it's like, you know what? I'd rather just stay home and read a fucking book or watch TV. It's like all you're doing is lying down, is sitting down, right? Which is like you're moving far less. So even if your nutrition is in check, which it probably isn't if you're just sitting home watching TV, but even if it is in check and you're just sitting down, you're moving way less than you were when you were younger. And that is a massive, massive, massive difference and has a huge toll on your metabolism, or in other words, how many calories you're burning every day, right? So yes, it does decrease with age, but not nearly as much as we thought, and actually takes a lot longer. Now, let's get into the top 3 things you can do to help increase your metabolism, okay? Now, the very first one should come as no surprise if you've been a fan of my content for a while, which by the way, if you're enjoying this video and you don't already, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, all right? It would mean a lot. So with that in mind, if you've been following the channel for a while, you probably know what I'm gonna say. The first thing that you can do to increase your metabolism is walk more. Just walk more. Now, earlier in the video, I mentioned how there's like a lot of like people convolute, well, like, is it non-exercise activity thermogenesis or is it exercise activity? Like if I plan to go on a walk, does that count as NEAT or is that actually exercise? It doesn't fucking matter. I don't care. Technically, if you're planning to go on a walk, well, then that would go under exercise activity thermogenesis. But it doesn't fucking matter if it's technically NEAT or EAT. I don't care. Just walk more. Walk more. At least 7,500 steps a day is super, super important, okay? Now, and if you can't walk, if you're in a wheelchair or any number of things, any movement counts, okay? I don't care if it's an elliptical or if it's a rower or if it's swimming or if it's biking. I don't care. Move. Please, for the love of God. Never mind for the weight loss and metabolic benefits, but just the health. Just your health. Like the health benefits are unfucking believable. But without question, specific to this video and this topic of increasing your metabolism, getting more steps in is going to be one of the best things you can possibly do, if not the best thing to increase your metabolism. I think it has you have the most control over this over anything else, and it can dramatically add up to a higher metabolic rate, okay? Now, the next thing that we're going to talk about is building muscle. Weightlifting. Now, usually people will put building muscle first, right? And I understand why, because building muscle, it burns more calories at rest. Unfortunately, it's not that much, right? So for every extra pound of muscle that you build, which by the way, takes a lot of fucking work, but for every extra pound of muscle you build, you're burning maybe like 4 to 6 extra calories for every pound, right? So if you add 10 pounds of muscle, which is very difficult to do, that's an extra like 40 to 60 calories. It's not even a fucking apple, okay? Like for an extra 10 pounds of muscle. So I'm not saying that it's a bad idea to build muscle. I'm literally saying it's number 2, one of the most important things you can do. But when people are trying to sell you on programs and being like, oh God, yeah, build all this muscle, it's gonna help burn so many extra calories at rest, it's actually not that much extra. What I think is more important than the calorie burn you get from muscle building is actually the lifestyle benefits that you get from muscle building, and especially as you get older, right? When you build more muscle now, Well, what does that lead to? It leads you to live a more active life. It allows you to move longer. It allows you to be more active. It allows you to have a more healthy, active life, minimal pain. You can move longer. Like when you get to 60 and your metabolism legitimately starts to drop, if you have more muscle mass and you've stayed active all of that time, now you're going to be able to continue moving and walking, and that's going to mitigate the metabolic drop-off that you get when you're 60. So for me personally, yes, well, your metabolism will increase from building muscle. Don't look at like building muscle as the end-all be-all of increasing your metabolism. I would look at building muscle as this is a lifestyle habit that will allow me to not only live longer, but increase my metabolism through staying active longer as I continue to build muscle and get stronger, okay? So I think it's more of a marketing tactic that people will use, or maybe it's just a little bit of ignorance, not knowing how many calories they're actually burning from that extra muscle. But don't overlook the lifestyle habits and benefits that you get just from building more muscle and how that will impact your ability to walk more and move more throughout the day, all right? Now, the third one, in terms of how you can actually increase your metabolism, protein. Increase protein, right? So increasing protein is super important. Why is it super important to increase your protein? Well, going back to the thermic effect of food, right? So I said fat, one of the main macronutrients. We have proteins, carbs, fats. We also have alcohol, but we're not going to talk about that. Proteins, carbs, fats. Fat requires your body to burn the least amount of calories in order to actually digest and use it. Carbs and protein are similar, but protein does have a pretty significant advantage even over carbohydrates, right? So in order for your body to digest and use protein, it requires your body to heat up more, to use more energy to process it. If you've ever had the meat sweats, where you've eaten a lot of meat at once and like your body really starts to heat up and you get sweaty from that, that is the thermic effect of food in action. That is literally, that's it happening right there. It's not an accident. Your body will heat up in order to use all of this extra protein in order to break it down so your body can use it as usable energy. So increasing your protein is gonna actually have a huge, huge impact on your metabolism, especially if you're not eating enough now. Now, if you're eating enough already, which I would say is about 0.7 grams per pound of your lean body mass, or 0.7 grams per pound of your goal weight. So I'll give you an example. For me, 0.7 times 150, like 0.7 times 150 pounds, is about 105 grams of protein, right? So 0.7 times 150, it works out to about 105. So if I'm eating 100 grams of protein per day and I increase that to 125 grams, it's not gonna have that big of an impact. It's not gonna make that big of a difference in terms of my metabolic rate. Or in terms of the actual benefits I would get from increasing that percentage. But if I was only eating 20 grams of protein and then I increased it to 100 grams of protein, now I'm gonna have a huge fucking difference. Now I'm getting a much more appropriate amount. I'm getting enough to actually build more muscle. I'm getting enough to actually recover from strength training. I'm getting enough to actually increase my metabolism far more, because that's a much greater percentage than going from 100 grams to 120. Going from 20 to 100 is a much, much, much more impactful thing to do. So if you're getting enough already, 0.7 grams per pound of your goal body weight, you don't need to increase more just because you think it's going to be more metabolically advantageous. Even though it might actually be a little bit more metabolically advantageous, we have to look at the other side of the coin and say, well, now what are you taking away? If you're already getting enough protein, well, are you taking away enough fats like to support your hormonal health? Are you taking away carbohydrates to actually enjoy your foods or get enough energy from carbohydrates? Because carbohydrates are the easiest form of energy to use for your body in terms of exercise, not to mention they just taste amazing. They're in so many foods. I would rather you get enough of everything than hyper focus and prioritize just protein and actually end up taking away from other aspects of your diet as well. So while eating more protein might be beneficial from a metabolic perspective, there's a point of diminishing returns, right? So you don't want to really go far past that. So generally speaking, between 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of your goal body weight is a really good amount of protein to have. And as long as you're having that, you're going to be optimizing your metabolic rate as well as improving muscle gain and strength recovery and all of that stuff as well. So I think I answered every question about this. Mitch, do you have any questions based on everything that I've said?
No, that was great.
Cool. All right. So if you have any questions about any of this, post them in the comment section. As you know, in every video, we pick 3 people who left a comment to win a free month in the Inner Circle. And actually, I think we're about to go pick the Inner Circle winners from the last video. So we're gonna stop this right now. Hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you are, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you don't already, leave a comment if you have any questions, or if you want to be entered to win a free month in the Inner Circle. And now we're gonna go discuss or announce the 3 people who won the Inner Circle free month from the last video. All right, so the 3 Inner Circle winners from this video are W. Green, Tasha Cruz, and Sebastian Garcia Cordero. Congratulations. I left you a comment telling you exactly how to get your free month, so look at the comment, email me, and we'll get you set up and ready to go. With that being said, now I have to go get a strength workout in, so let's head to the gym.
What's next?
Next, I've got Arnold press. All right, just got my workout in. As you saw, not that long, but very, very difficult, super intense, full body workout. Now let's answer some Instagram questions. All right, first Instagram question is from Risa Beth 923, and she said, this may be a dumb question, but how does drinking water aid in weight loss? And when you say weight loss, I'm gonna assume you're talking about fat loss because weight and fat are not the same, but for the sake of brevity, I'm gonna assume you're talking about fat loss. How does drinking water aid with fat loss? Now, I'll start by saying this, the only way to lose fat is to be in a calorie deficit, period, end of story. Regardless of whether or not you're super hydrated or dehydrated, whatever it is, the only way to lose fat is to be in a calorie deficit, period, end of story. But there are some things worth discussing. The first one is a very common myth. A lot of people say things like, when you get hungry, you're confusing thirst for hunger, and they're saying essentially that you're not really hungry, you're actually thirsty. That's bullshit. That's not accurate. If you're thirsty, if you're truly thirsty, the physiological responses that you'll get are dry mouth, often cotton mouth. Responses to dehydration, you'll notice your pee is often getting darker, right? So like if you're legitimately thirsty and getting dehydrated, hunger is not one of the feelings that you get, right? So actually when we look at the senses that we were all taught in like 4th grade, we were taught that there are 5 senses like sight, smell, hearing, taste, touch. These are the 5 senses we were taught. There's actually way more than 5 senses. If you Google all of these senses, like the sense of hunger is a sense in and of itself. The sense of thirst is a sense in and of itself. There are many different senses outside of just those 5. So you're not confusing thirst for hunger. You're probably actually hungry, or maybe you're bored or whatever it is, but an easy way to blunt that hunger is to drink, right? So this is one way in which drinking water can help with fat loss or weight loss, whatever you want to call it, is specifically because if you're getting hungry and then you drink something, then you're not going to be as hungry immediately. That being said, if you do this chronically, then you're never gonna eat because you're just gonna try and fill up your stomach with water and water and water. And it's just a really bad idea. Like, I don't like the idea of only drinking when you're hungry, or like, hey, you have to do that and you're confusing thirst for hunger, because that creates a very bad relationship with food. It's like, no, you're allowed to be hungry. It's okay, it's not a bad thing, right? But if you're trying to lose weight and you're noticing that hunger is a very, very big issue for you, it can be helpful to make sure, you know what, I'm gonna have a drink first before I dive into my meal, if for no other reason than it's just gonna fill you up a little bit more and maybe it'll prevent you from overeating, right? So there's nothing magical about drinking or water from the perspective of it's going to help me burn fat faster or it's gonna accelerate my weight loss just because I'm drinking more. It's just simply that if you are full and you've drank a lot of water, you're far less likely to continue overeating because you'll be more full. Next question is from Lane Sachs. They said, I need to lose weight. Should I do cardio or strength training? Please answer. I'm gonna answer for you right now. So if you wanna lose weight, like I just said, calorie deficit. Right? That's the most important thing. Doesn't matter in terms of strength training or cardio, doesn't matter if you're jump roping or walking, doesn't matter if you're lifting super heavy powerlifting or Olympic lifting or bodybuilding. If you want to lose body fat, you need to be in a calorie deficit regardless of what type of exercise you're doing. Now, I think the phrasing of this question is always very interesting. It's always like an either or. Should I do strength or cardio? Essentially, which is better, which one's worse? Realistically, you should do both. You should lift weights, you should do strength training, and you should do cardio. You don't have to do them both in the same day. You don't have to do both every single day, but a couple days a week, strength training, and a couple days a week doing cardio is gonna be better than either alone. Now, again, regardless of which one you do, if you go all in strength or you go all in cardio, whatever, the only way you're gonna lose fat is by being in a calorie deficit. So for me, when it comes to training, I look at training from the perspective of what benefits will I get outside of fat loss, right? So cardio is gonna be a really good benefit for my heart health, for my cardiovascular health. Cardio is super, super important for many, many reasons from a health perspective. Strength training also has many health benefits, not least of, or not even beginning to mention the aesthetic aspects of it, getting more toned, more defined, getting stronger, being more capable, more resilient, less risk of injury, all these things that come with strength training. So you should do cardio for your health. You should do strength training for your health. And if you want to lose fat, eat in a calorie fucking deficit. And if you don't know how to do that, link is in the description of this video to my calorie calculator. It is free. It's here on YouTube. It's going to tell you how many calories you can eat in order to lose body fat. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you don't already. And also, if you want to be entered to win a free month in the Inner Circle, leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Any questions, any comments, constructive criticism, whatever, let me know. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon.